Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of the Outside Insider podcast here on Philly Sports Network with myself, Liam Jenkins. You know the score by now. All things Eagles related, wrapped up, put inside a pigskin and floated over the top of your head like a perfectly thrown ball by Carson Wentz into your hands, the safe hands of you, aka Deshaun Jackson. So, it is Eagles training camp, it is finally here, you know what that means, it's random sound effect time, I've got no idea what these are, we want them all, we're excited, we're pumped up, I haven't got a clue what's going on, but we're here, training camp's upon us, it's season 6, I've got no idea why that one's still going. That's a long... I thought it would... There we go. Here we're at the end. But season 6 is upon us. I've been trying to, bridge that gap now for a solid month. But we are here. It's arrived. Which means, if you are not yet subscribed, we are on for the first time in season 6. Sing it with me if you know the words, ladies and gentlemen. Apple, Spotify, Spreaker, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Castbox. That's a new one. Didn't see that one coming. Google Podcasts, to the hundreds of people on YouTube. If you are not yet subscribed, if you could go on Apple Podcasts, leave a nice little 5-star review, that would be lovely. If not, that's alright, as long as you just tap your desk 5 times, like this. That counts as a review as well, so do that, and we'll be just fine. But I was not expecting to start this podcast, where we've got all the usual features, we've got thank you next. I didn't want to start it by talking about one of the most blasphemous topics that this podcast specifically would ever have to address. If you're new to this podcast, you may think, oh my god, this is only going to go bad. It's clearly about his awful love life. But instead, no. If you're a long-time listener, there is one player on this Eagles team that I am emotionally attached to. Not in that way, alright? But Captain Cre'Von. It's been an emotional journey since he came aboard, and that game against the Rams, where a delirious Liam, on minus 0.5 hours sleep, stayed up through the night, tweeting about Captain Cre'Von, photoshopping a pirate ship and a pirate hat onto an image of himself. By himself, I mean him, not me. That would be barbaric. But Captain Cre'Von has been a focal point of my brand for quite some time now. And I've tried numerous times his mum follows me on Twitter, he follows me on Twitter, but despite numerous attempts, we can't get him on the show, and that's a little bit upsetting. However, my concerns were grossly expedited when I woke up on a sunny Friday afternoon. In fact, it was one of the hottest Friday afternoons in English history. I think it was 30 degrees, which is around 90 degrees Fahrenheit Celsius, the other one that we don't use. It's pretty hot. And I was scrolling through Twitter, Eagles were going to go and practice at 9:15. I had an article scheduled before, I had an article scheduled after. I sat at my table with a nice bowl of Curiously Cinnamon. I open up my laptop and I see a tweet. And I'm not going to mention who it is from, because, obviously there are loads of people that tweeted, but it was someone that already is not in my good books because of a grudge I've held since I was 19 years old. So, you can eliminate the friends of the podcast straight away. If you want to play Guess Who, you can narrow down anyone that's ever been on this show, ever. But there was a tweet that came out citing that Cre'Von LeBlanc's not at practice today. He's perfectly healthy. But could this mean he's being shopped around the league to one New York Jets, perhaps? Now, firstly, my initial thought was, well, it was Cre'Von's birthday yesterday. He's probably gone out. He's got a little bit litty. He's had a few drinks. He's got up on a table and started singing Football's Coming Home, because that's what I would do if I was drunk on my birthday. In fact, it's what I did do. There are stories from my birthday I'd rather not delve into, but I'm sure in about 7 minutes' time, all will be revealed. So Cre'Von's probably gone out, had a good time, woke up hungover, and just thought, it's not the best idea I show up to camp today. Mate, that was my first thought. Because, hey, do you know what? Come on, let's be honest here. If a guy's perfectly healthy, he has a birthday, and he's not at practice the next day, maybe the team gave him a day off. I don't know what Cre'Von's like, if he's a party animal or not. He doesn't come across that way at all. But, as a comical take, it's something worth looking at. But then, obviously, the real serious analysis side of it came out, that players don't really not show up for practice if they're healthy because they're trying to make the roster. And Cre'Von specifically should be there. He's behind Sidney Jones. There's a lot of cornerbacks on that roster. And as of right now, half of them aren't even there. because they're injured. So like Darby's rehabbing to the side. Mills has got weird curtains in his hair, and we'll get to that shortly as well, because Emo Liam's having a field day with this. So with Douglas, Maddox, Jones all on the field, it gives Cre'Von LeBlanc a bit of exposure. Maybe some first team reps, a lot of special team stuff, and definitely second team. So the only explanation, aside from the party with Travis Scott, is that he's assumingly being traded, or there is a trade in the works, or maybe he's going for a physical, or maybe it's something around that kind of bubble. Now, I've got a load of issues with this, and I'm going to be upfront and honest with you, I don't like it. Now I know this came out later, before we all kick off and think, Liam, this is a 45-minute podcast on something where Jim Schwartz has said isn't happening. Jim Schwartz said it's an injury, there are tests going on. Now, I'm not being funny, he was perfectly healthy yesterday and he's not today, and there are tests going on. That can very, very easily be a bit of a blanket cover-up, a bit of a distraction, while the bigger picture is at work. Let's not forget, this Eagles medical staff, before we even think about trades here, I know it's been revamped, but they don't exactly have the best track record. And B, if a trade is in the works, you're not going to go out and say a trade is in the works in case it hampers the negotiation for either party. That's the beauty of it, yeah. It's sort of like, if you're going to ask a girl out, you don't tell your friend, who's also single and has a thing for her, that you're going to ask her out, because he might try and pick you to the post. Talking from experience here, on the receiving end, not a pretty picture. So 14-year-old Liam was absolutely distraught that Ella got away. The one that got away at age 14. But you just don't do it. You don't see coaches go, yeah, Cre'Von's not here because we're trying to trade him, lads. We're in a bit of a negotiation. We're talking to the New York Jets. Old Joe Douglas, he's on the phone. Oi. No. It will be, he's got an injury, don't know what it is, running tests. Nice and simple. Passes the buck, moves it on. You keep the discussion going. A bit more generally, a bit broader. So that's where I'm still focusing on this, because I think there is weight to it. Unless Cre'Von comes back tomorrow and this whole podcast is made irrelevant, which is brilliant. Hey, at least we won't get another story breaking 45 minutes in. Actually, we probably might, because I guarantee he's traded at minute 38 of this podcast. I will cry. But on to reasons why this, it has weight. It has weight for everything we just described. The problem is, if we're talking cornerback trades, it just shouldn't be Cre'Von LeBlanc. And I'm not saying this because I'm the one that sits there at 3 a.m. photoshopping pirate hats onto his head. Oh no. I'm saying this from a pure logic standpoint. Especially for training camp. Forget the regular season and roster cuts and all of that fun stuff. As of right now, Darby's sidelined. Jalen Mills is on the PUP list, or the puppy list. And Avonte Maddox, according to Tim Houck, the safeties coach, he spoke very openly about that. I think it was Paul Domowitch actually tweeted it the other day, saying that by the second or third preseason game, they'll know what they want to do with Maddox, which of course then has a knock-on effect to what happens with Andrew Sende and every other safety in the locker room. Another of which is not practicing, Blake Countess. So, for the minute, let's look at this picture. If Blake Countess isn't practicing, and Maddox might be moving to safety, he's going to get a lot of reps if he just, sprinkles in a few through practice. Now he'd probably be second team. So in this picture alone, Rasul Douglas is currently CB2, Maddox is currently CB1 or vice versa, Jones is in the nickel. If Maddox moves, pushing Sidney Jones outside, they need a nickel corner, which as of right now, today was Malcolm Jenkins. Okay, Malcolm Jenkins, as in the guy that's a 3-time Pro Bowler, who played 99% of snaps last year. Yeah, that Malcolm Jenkins is now taking on second team slot duties because there's no one else to do it, and the team need a second team slot guy, so he's ramping up his workload despite not... I'm done ranting about how Malcolm Jenkins needs to get paid. Alright, the point is, if you trade Cre'Von LeBlanc, that is your situation right now. You're going to expose Malcolm Jenkins to what is like a workload and then 0.25 more. You're going to have Avonte Maddox potentially at safety anyway. There's no depth. It's weird, isn't it? It's very, very weird that on the surface, if you take injuries out of the equation, this mystical blackboard, you've got Darby, Mills, Jones, Douglas, Maddox, LeBlanc, and whoever else. 6 guys, nice and easy. If you factor injuries into it, and a potential position move, well, they're down to 3, and one of them might be moving up. So that's 2. And Malcolm Jenkins, he shouldn't be playing slot, because that's not what he does, because he's got his own role. So, do you see my point? It wouldn't make at least logical sense to me. If I'm Howie Roseman, and I am looking to shop a cornerback, I've said this in podcasts before, it's not Cre'Von LeBlanc. I would happily... No, I shouldn't say happily, because that implies I'm really excited. I don't have a vengeance against Ronald Darby, for those wondering. This has been a bit of a long-standing thing. I just wasn't a fan of the move. But if I'm going to trade a cornerback, Ronald Darby or Jalen Mills. 100%. If Ronald Darby balls out this year, which I'm hoping he does to prove me wrong and shut me up for once, because I think I need it, right? If he balls out and has an amazing year, well, then he's not going to stay in Philly, because they've got all the other guys we've just mentioned who are there waving, checking their time, playing a bit of Candy Crush on the sideline, seeing all the memes in the WhatsApp group. Classic. Who are likely going to be sat there for a year watching on. Not growing, not getting experience, not playing, not learning, just sat on the sideline watching. Basically work experience, but you get paid a lot. So that'd be good, wouldn't it? So I would try, Ronald Darby, obviously Darby would have more value, and let's not forget the way in which Ronald Darby was acquired and for who and the contracts at the time. That trade still breaks my heart, because I love Jordan Matthews and I've spoken to him like 3 or 4 times professionally, unprofessionally several more. I love the guy. Wish him all the best in San Francisco at the minute. So that one stung on a personal level. But I think that trade said a lot. It reminded you that football is a business. And even Malcolm Jenkins yesterday said, well, you can't expect to keep everyone, or something along those lines. Probably if it was a roadman Englishman, like, Wagwan fam, can't expect to keep... I can't do a really rough, chavvy voice. It's like me being... It's a British gangster, but not that. So, the fact is, if you're expecting to lose people, it's the equivalent of it. I would more try... I think Jalen Mills holds slightly more chance of being traded. I don't doubt that. I think that given his contract situation, it's about time they go through a transition of moving up another CB2, of finding someone new to be the heir to the throne. Darby, you can make a case, hey, if he wants to stay in Philadelphia, if the Eagles win another Super Bowl, why would he want to go anywhere else? Would he take a pay cut? I think you can absolutely make that argument given how loyal the team have been to him. So that, I get. I totally get it. And he currently is the best corner on the team, whether I like it or not. Jalen Mills, meanwhile, I understand there's a lot of, I'd say, false criticism about him, where it's what you see on TV, which is him biting on double moves. There's a lot less understanding of his responsibilities when playing like bail or off coverage, or when he's looking after the curl and flat and the receiver gets behind because the safety hasn't come. That stuff like that isn't on him. But he's still a fringe starter cornerback. At best, kind of. Like, I'm not a massive Jalen Mills savant. I'm not going to sit here pounding the table for him in the same way I would Rasul Douglas. So if I'm trading one of them, it's Jalen Mills, because he's not going to be on the team next year. He's a free agent next season. And that's where the LeBlanc value comes in, because he's got a bit more contract weight to his name. But let's not forget, LeBlanc's only 24 years old. Rasul Douglas, Avonte Maddox, both incredibly young. Maddox only entering his 2nd season. This is the equivalent of holding a car boot sale or garage sales. I sounded so posh. Garage sales, right? And selling a load of consoles, alright? Your kid has been a bit of a dick, alright? And he's lobbed an egg at your window and you're like, right, Steve, enough. Get out. I'm selling all your consoles because there's a yolk on the window and the dog's eating it and now it's going to get ill. That's your fault, right? So you sell all his consoles, kids crying like, stop. And on the table, you've got a PS4, an Xbox One. He's a lucky kid. He's got both, alright? Both of them don't work though, because Mum got a bit angry before and started kicking them, started hitting them with a hammer. Maybe one's got a torn wire and the other one's got a broken disc tray. They still work, but they're not perfect. They're a bit wounded. Yeah? Not going to last forever. And then, there's an Xbox 360 there. Just with all the old games, all the old classics, all your old favourites. I'm talking FIFA 11. Wasted my entire childhood on that. Modern Warfare 2. Battlefield 3. Madden 11. Something about that 2011 year. I'm telling you, year 11 Liam was in his prime. So someone comes up and he's like, oh, I want to buy one of your consoles. I mean, the kid needs one back. You can't sell all of them. And you can't really give him 2 broken ones because you know they're broken. You know they're going to break and be broken. Right? So you've got to do something. If you sell the 360 where you know what you get, it's a lovely console, all your favourites on it, cheap, cheerful. I've said that before. I mean, someone, oh, hello, the email's gone off. That wasn't cheerful. That interrupted my flow. Not happy about that. But it is. Like, I went and bought a PS3 like 6 months ago. Well, I say that, about a year ago. It was second hand, and albeit the disc tray doesn't stay shut, but beggars can't be choosers. And I can play NCAA 14 in England, and that's all you need. So why wouldn't you want that in a 360? Why would you try and sell that, knowing your kid's there still crying? It's like, at least give him Modern Warfare 2 back. Why would you trade away the 360 and then be left with the broken bits over the summer? Sure, there might be new consoles out in the winter. You can buy him one of them. But between now and Christmas, aka week 1, it could go a bit wrong. It might not turn on for 6 weeks. It might be on the unplugged list or something. Yeah? So, that's my take. I don't know, it's a weird one with Cre'Von LeBlanc. I think that if you're going to trade a cornerback, I've heard people in my mentions even talk about trading Sidney Jones, and that got me a little bit, because that's the one. I mean, if I was to name every cornerback and just give a vocal reaction off the bat, like if I go on the roster now, I'll show you what I mean, okay? This is off the script, okay? Off the script, LJ. If I open up the Eagles roster, I go through every cornerback from Ronald Darby to Josh Hawkins, and my reaction if they get traded. Let's say the returns a pick and a player, something a bit general, right? Ronald Darby you traded, banging, happy with that. Rasul Douglas traded, not happy, really not happy. Josh Hawkins, cool, it is what it is. Sidney Jones, it's a bit of a weird one, isn't it? It's a bit of a weird one. He's a former second round pick. You know he's got high potential. Is it going to evolve? The battle you're facing is the NFL is a what have you done for me recently league, and all Sidney Jones has done outside of a strong start is get injured and be inconsistent. So a team looking to maybe pick up on that, you're like, if you can get value, maybe third round. You don't know. You don't know. Cre'Von LeBlanc, no. Jamalcolm Liggins, I don't think a team would trade for him, but I love his skill set. I think he's the tallest corner in the room. For that reason, he stays. Alright? Avonte Maddox, no. Look, literally, put him in bubble wrap. Protect that man at all costs. Jeremiah McKinnon. Godwin Igwebuike. Godwin. Do you see my problem with Sidney Jones? The other aspect, really quickly, before we get on to thank you Nets, because I spent 18 minutes talking about corners. You knew this was going to happen. Corners are like my favourite position to look at in the NFL, to break down on film. It's just fun. So I could talk all day about this. But there's one, I did a little bit of detective work. Ready? Now, I don't know which sound effect this is. I think it's that one. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I did some detective work. Do you want to hear it again? Oh, yeah. And I found out that after seeing that tweet from he who must not be named, who I have a grudge with, who was very passively mean to me as a 19-year-old, probably won't remember it. It'll be one of those moments in a few years' time where I'll make him. Essentially, citing the New York Jets as a potential destination. I did some digging. Obviously, the first link there is Joe Douglas, okay? A guy that helped bring Cre'Von LeBlanc on board, that helped claim him off waivers from Detroit, and without him, there probably would be no situation like this in Philadelphia where Cre'Von LeBlanc is even being discussed. The guy broke out, was arguably one of the reasons that secondary didn't falter completely and fall flat on its face. So I'm happy. I think we can all agree that was a good signing. All came from Joe Douglas, who is now, of course, the GM of the New York Jets. Ooh! Alright, better go. Oh, it gets worse. You think that's detected? That is borderline. I mean, I am talking, we have found an Instagram and gone digging and on a... Well, we haven't. That sounds weird, but... Did you know? Okay, this is a big one. Jets receiver Josh Bellamy, who is on the New York Jets, not only was teammates with Cre'Von LeBlanc during 2017, okay, not only did the two really bond during that season and become very good friends, did you know they filmed a rap track? I know. Cre'Von LeBlanc and wide receiver Josh Bellamy filmed a rap track called On a Wave. Yeah? On a Wave. I'm on a wave right now. I'm on a wave to stop trading Cre'Von. You loon. Stop it. Keep him safe. But it makes sense. He's got a friend there. Mr. Bellamy also commented on his Instagram birthday post wishing him the best. So the two are quite close. I don't know. What do you make of that, eh? That's Detective LJ for you. Just having a bit of a snoop there. On that note, be sure to let me know if you're watching on YouTube, guys. Drop your comments on everything discussed. And I mean everything, okay? Most things, some things. If you're not on YouTube, don't panic. My Twitter is @LiamJenkinsPSN, where you can also... You see what I did there? Ask me questions for Thank You Next, which is a part of the show where I take, aka your questions, put them into this podcast, merge them together like a Digimon. So, we're going to kick off this episode of Thank You Next with Teddy Buriani, one of our loyal listeners. Thank you next. How many linebackers we keeping? I would say, right, let me count this out in my head. So, Nigel Bradham, Zach Brown, Camu Grugier-Hill, LJ4, maybe, I want to say Nate Jerry as well, I think that's fair. Those would probably be the 5. I would love to keep Alex Singleton, just because I think I'm in love with his skill set. I think as a special teamer, he's got a nice ceiling, plays very, very similarly to Camu Grugier-Hill, and after breaking down a lot of CFL tape over the last couple of years for different reasons, I just think he's got a nice transferable skill set to the NFL. But I think he got in the practice squad. My hunch would be 5. Thank you next at ML Striker says, who do you think should be our starting secondary week 1 and who do I think will be? Who I think should be is a very different answer, I'm afraid. I think if I was coach right now, which if we're going off my incredibly successful 0-3 NFL head coach 09 series right now is a great grading scale, I would put Avonte Maddox, Rasul Douglas, Sidney Jones, keep one of Darby and Mills as depth. Do you know what? I'll move Maddox to safety. Now I'm starting again. Darby, Jones, Douglas, Maddox at safety with McLeod, and then you can have Blake Counters behind Sendejo cut for a 4th round pick. Then you don't even need to trade LeBlanc, so you're welcome. How I think it's actually going to be is Darby, Mills, and Jones, because that is just the way the cookie crumbles, really, isn't it? I'm afraid. If you buy a cookie, you know what it is. It doesn't matter how many times you look at it, it's not going to turn into a Nintendo 64. As much as you love Mario Kart, it's still a cookie, and it's going out of date. So just eat the cookie, alright? Thank you next, Geordie Fighter 14. What do you think about Captain Cre'Von and his mystery injury? I think we've gone through that one. I don't want to harp on for another 18 minutes. But if I played for Philly, what would your position and number be? Well, my favourite number's 21. I don't know why, it always has been. I think a bit of a weird one with that. I watched a NASCAR race once and Trevor Bayne won it and he's done nothing since, but he had number 21. And I quite like the fact he was like the youngest ever. That's about the only NASCAR race I've ever watched. And yeah, I don't know, I like number 21. And let's be open here. I've got a nice... I don't mean to brag. I don't know if I've ever mentioned this before, on this podcast. This is still totally new to me. 38-inch vertical. What was it? What? Someone say my... No, just saying I got a 38-inch... Yeah, alright. Yeah, I got a 38-inch... What? Elite skills. Oh, sorry, you two. What's that? Average height of a college athlete. Me? No. Oh, you. Yep, so I would say me and my 38-inch vertical and the number 21 pair up very nicely with being a corner. I'm not aggressive enough for safety. I'm a bit cuddly, really. Just like a big grizzly bear. And I think that to be a safety, you're going to be a bit more of a wolf. So, you know, I'd just be a big swatty bear is what I would be. Thank you. Next, not 23 Common says, what's the name of the podcast? The Outside Inside. If you're not listening to this, I don't know why I'm answering. That's sort of... yeah. We did it, though. We did it. Just for you. Shout out. Well done. Thank you. Whoa, emails again. Thank you. Next, Eagles Legacy. Would you consider giving out a copy of Madden or using Madden gameplay for a series? Part 1. Don't ruin next week. That's a surprise. You've ruined it now. And part 2... yeah, I mean, you've all seen how well NFL head coach 09 is going, and Madden 19 lasted all of 2 episodes, so why not? I think we can do that. Thank you, it's a lot today. Thank you. Next, Erin Fenstermaker says, how big of a role do I believe Dallas Goedert will have this season? Now I want you to close your eyes and imagine my response. This big. However big you thought I said that with my arms, my 38-inch vertical arms, is how big I believe. You may have had them small, you may have had them big. That's part of the fun, alright? We were a lively bunch here, we know how to live. Cre'Von LeBlanc added me to his birthday party, this would have been part of it. Cre'Von, shut your eyes. And I'm going to say how big I think this packet of crisps is. There's this nice tube of Pringles. If you get it right, you can have the tube. You can see I'm a world of fun at parties, and this is definitely why I socialise and have a very successful love life. Thank you. Next, No Pro Sports. Do you think the Eagles will make a trade and before the end of training camp? Yeah, I think that all signs are pointing towards it. I don't know who. I know that there have been a couple players shopped between the start of the off-season, obviously, and now. None of them successfully. So, I don't know. It's a bit of a tricky one. I'd assume it's a cornerback. My money would be on Jalen Mills. But I'm not putting money on it because although I'm a sucker for a big bet, as many of you will know, you can't bet on that. It's not a market. If it was, I would, you know? So, there's that. And finally, we've saved the best for last. I feel bad because I missed his question last week. So, very sincere apologies. Kuyard2941, one of our most loyal listeners who sends in questions every single week. What do you make of Jenkins' comment about not everyone going to be here? I know it's unlikely, but Clowney is very intriguing to think about. Do you see any DBs? Well, see, I've just psychopathically, not that, I mean psychologically, not meant, you know, I'm not going to kill you, but I've psychologically answered all your questions. It's like I read that question and thought I'll base a whole podcast just for Kuya. I think Clowney, though, onto the stuff we haven't spoken into the ground, I think it's an intriguing option. My worry is that he wants to be paid quite badly, and that's what's caused sort of the controversy currently in Houston. And if he's not happy playing under a franchise tag, you've then got to somehow source a long-term deal. And you know what? I think with Brandon Graham, with Derek Barnett, you can easily make the case for him. The worry would be you're going to end up paying a lot of money for a defensive end, and suddenly you're then going to be swamped, because Derek Barnett's going to need a new contract soon, because next year, that's year number 4. Okay? Brandon Graham will then have 2 years left, getting up there in age. Vinny Curry may need to come back. Like, depth is going to be an issue. I would rather take that, let's say, 15 million and just spread it out and bring in a few different guys in free agency next year. So that would be the way I look. But, Kuya2941, you weren't finished there, were you? Because the other day, you DM'd me, and if I can find this now, live on the spot, if I can't, it's a bit embarrassing, because it sounds like I'm making up, I don't have friends, I promise I do. Turns out, I think, maybe, oh no, there it is, I found it! He says, 21 million under cap, 21 million under the cap, how would you predict this being utilised? Oh, I don't know. I think they're going to keep it, to be honest. I don't think there's a real need to push it all the way to the limits. That's something I would do. It's like having an extra bit of budget on your credit card and going, I don't need a new TV, but it's a new TV, isn't it? You might as well. And then you look back in 6 months and suddenly you owe a lot of money. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt, had to sell the t-shirt to pay off the credit card. So I don't think Roseman's going to do that. They've been miraculous with the cap this year, and I think they're just going to do what it takes to keep it all nice and calming, nice and relaxed. Just have it there if you need it, but also pay Malcolm Jenkins. That's quite an important thing. But that is it for the episode of Thank You Next. If you want to submit your questions in the future, you know what to do. Follow me on Twitter at Liam Jenkins PSN. So, you know, Liam is in my name, Jenkins, name again, PSN, Philly Sports Network. Follow on there, give me a little question, or DM me, they're open, and we'll get them read out on the podcast. But if not, don't worry, I'll try to psychologically answer them. But there's not much to talk about from training camp overall at this point. There's only been 2 days, so we can't get too deep with anything. But there have been some interesting takeaways. One, that Darren Sproles still looks really good. Another, obviously, while on the running back position, Miles Sanders has come straight in, taken first team reps, also taken second team reps as well. That's huge for his development, considering that he missed all of OTA. So that is absolutely huge. But there have been no contact to this point. No contactamundo. The pads go on tomorrow. So, unless you're watching this tomorrow, in which case they're on now. Someone's walking around with pads on. So, on Saturday's practice will be the first padded one where contact is encouraged. I mean, they don't have to hit each other, I suppose. They could run around like daisies, but they may not. So, that's going to be our first real chance at getting a look at what this team do. From what I understand, Friday's practice was a lot more of almost like a run-through, a lot more install attention and individual drills. So, a lot of the Carson Wentz to the Deshaun Jackson stuff, that's great. There was no defense on the field, so you're kind of hoping he lands those in the buckets. But somehow, Cody Kessler's struggling. Nate Sudfeld didn't look great today by all accounts, so that's going to be fun. But Clayton Thorson is, the quarterback might need a little bit of focus on outside of Carson Wentz. But the last thing I did want to touch on is one player who has come back from injury, got a new haircut, which is the most important thing. I mean, it's bad when it gets to a point the first thing people report about you is you've had a haircut. Unless it's a good haircut. I never had that luxury with barbers. It took me a solid 22 years to find a good barber. And now me and Matty are closer than ever. I go in there at 10 in the morning. He says, "Do you want a beer?" I'm like, "No, Matty. It's a bit heavy." Yeah, and it's cool. His cousin actually is a massive Philadelphia sports fan. So he's a bouncer at my local nightclub, which means I get in without being searched. Which, that sounds dodgy. It's not. It's just that when you look like a 15-year-old girl and you sound like a 13-year-old girl, you get searched and ID'd everywhere you go. I can't buy a can of Red Bull without being ID'd. It is embarrassing. I'm 24 years old. That is the only place I can go where I feel a man of my age. So, thanks, Ben. If you listen to this podcast, you're a good guy. But that got sidetracked, as things normally do towards the end of this podcast. But back onto the main discussion of Matt Collins' haircut. Matt Collins is the player that we are talking about here. And the fact that in 2 days, he got criticised for not wearing gloves. I saw that's new. I mean, if he catches the ball, that's all that matters, right? It doesn't matter how the ball gets in the hole. It doesn't matter if you use a driver or a pitching wedge. If the ball gets in the hole, it gets in the hole. Stop complaining. Matt Collins comes back and made a one-handed grab today. Now that is huge. Not in fact that this is going to end up on like SportsCenter top 10, which I assume is still a thing. It might have been overtaken by BuzzFeed at this stage, though, so I don't want to give him too much credit. However, given the shape of this wide receiver position, with Olshon, Nelly, and Deshaun Jackson. I've never called Nelson Aguilar Nelly. I feel like we're on first name basis after that. Maybe he's going to start calling me LJ. The Nelly and LJ show. Wow. But behind those guys, it is a bit of a free-for-all. Shelton Gibson, his main path to the roster is special teams and proving he could be a speed guy behind Deshaun Jackson. He led the NFL in preseason yardage last year. Outside of that, he had one catch for 48 yards, so that went well. But then you've got guys like Charles Johnson, who, if you're a fan of... I say fan, I don't think that's the right word, but if you watch my content or read stuff, whatever, I've been big on Johnson for quite some time because I think that as a veteran guy, one of the oldest in the room, he brings that level of leadership, he's got the experience, but also he's got a skill set which is built for really punishing you after the catch. And it's something the Eagles tried to find last year with Golden Tate, tried in kind of succeeded. It's like they give it a go, they got halfway and the car ran out of fuel. But it's a thought that counts. I mean, if you ever drafted Golden Tate in DraftKings last year, Jesus, it was an absolutely emotional roller coaster. You sit there and he's on nothing all game, and then he gets 2 catches at the end, and you somehow get gambling stories with Liam. But I think Johnson's got a nice skill set. I think Greg Ward is familiar enough with the team where they know if they want to keep him on as this wild card kind of quarterback option. I spoke about that in a separate video, where if the Eagles do decide to emulate what we see from the New Orleans Saints, where they use Taysom Hill in a very similar way, keeping guys like Greg Ward, Braxton Miller all around the roster can be absolutely huge. Even if they're not on it, even if they're inactive, just keeping them around. So Matt Collins is in a very tricky spot. There's a lot of competition ahead, but I wrote a while back, and I'm not sure if I've said this in podcasts or not, but I think Matt Collins does have a road to this roster. I think he is secure, unless he gets injured again with another phantom injury. Maybe he just had a heartbreak. Now, I know it was a sports hernia, before anyone corrects me, which is 2 very different things, but for comic effect, I'm going to say it again and you're going to laugh. Maybe he had a heartbreak. That was... Hang on. Nah, that's the wrong one. I don't know what sound effect it is. We're moving on. I think Matt Collins' part of this roster is set. I don't think it's anywhere near as insecure as people think. But it's not outside. And that's where I'm going to catch a lot of you off guard. You're thinking, oh, Liam, what do you mean he's not outside? The answer is, I think Matt Collins could be the next big slot receiver. Think about it. Before the draft, okay, I've got the list up here. The Eagles met with the following players. Now, I'm going to name some of them, not all of them, because some of them you may not know, others you may. A.J. Brown, Paris Campbell, Emmanuel Hall, David Sills, Jalen Hurd, Hunter Renfrow, Deontay Johnson, Olamide Zacchaeus, and Vincent Papali, of course, son of Vince Papali, who was in the Invincible film. Now think, all of those players and more, like, N'Keal Harry and Emmanuel Hall, fit one of 2 options. Either a speedy wide receiver 2 option or a big slot guy. A big slot was something they focused on massively. Someone who maybe 6'2", 6'3" and above could get in the slot and dominate, line up in jumbo formations and block, take pressure off the tight ends, and of course hurt you down the seam. Now they went on to draft Stanford's J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, who fits the mould of that, standing at 6'2", 225. He's got a very similar skill set to Alshon Jeffrey, and that's where many people perceive him to play. Now, there is a good chance that if Nelson Aguilar does move on next year, Alshon Jeffrey still contracted for $15 million, that Sega does move inside. But think about this, okay? Hollins is 6'4", 221 pounds, and his only NFL touchdown as a rookie came from the slot. According to Player Profile, at 6% of his 32% snap share. Now, I'm no good at math, but what is 6% of 32% of a number? That's hard. But it's up there. If 6% of 30, that's less than a third, maybe a sixth, 1 in every 6. I don't know, I'm no good at math, that's why I'm talking on a podcast. But the guy's huge, he's fast, and he did average 20.6 yards per reception for UNC. Not only that, he caught 81% of catchable passes as a rookie. If you want someone on the seam to run a curl, is a little 5'9" corner gonna... I say little, that was really belittling, I'm sorry. I genuinely didn't mean that. Is a smaller cornerback gonna be able to get up and get his arms around Matt Collins? Because I say no. No can do. And that's why he's dangerous. I think Matt Collins, if he can stay on this roster, will be used in the slot. Watch that number. I think, especially in preseason, his slot reps will rocket. And you will see him emerge as a slot guy. And if Nelson Aguilar moves on, the Eagles can then one day build a core in maybe 3 years' time that will be Deshaun Jackson, Matt Collins, JJ Arcega-Whiteside. That we're talking long term, as in if they don't sign Jeffrey or whatever, I'm sure they will, but yeah, I can see it. Matt Collins, big slot guy. But I want to end on that because he had a good start at OTAs or training camp, whichever one. Probably training camp, considering that was yesterday. But let me know what you think, guys, of this podcast. The first episode of Season 6 in the books. If you want to follow me on Twitter, at Liam Jenkins PSN. If you don't worry about it. But if you could leave a review on Apple Podcasts, that would be absolutely amazing. If you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much for taking out time out of your day to listen to me ramble for 40 minutes. It is greatly appreciated. I love every single one of you. I promised myself I wouldn't get soppy. It's happening. So I'm going to really awkwardly hit this end button before it gets too much. So see you next time, people of the world. Goodbye.